Below him, the shooting hasn't stopped in over an hour. Warrant Officer Hugh Thompson is 24 years old, flying a small scout helicopter 200 feet above a Vietnamese village called Sun Mi. He is not looking for the enemy anymore. He is looking at a ditch. The ditch is full of bodies. Women, children, an old man face down in the mud beside, a child who cannot be older than 3. None of them are holding weapons. None of them ever were. Thompson keys his radio and says the sentence that will follow him for the rest of his life. He says, "I think we've got a problem here." He does not yet know that the problem is his own army. March 16, 1968. The village of Sun Mai, the Americans call it My Lai, sits in Quang Ngai Province, South Vietnam. Charlie Company, 1st Battalion, 20th Infantry, has been told to expect a Viet Cong stronghold. There is no stronghold. There are farmers, children walking to school, women cooking breakfast. Charlie Company soldiers have lost friends to landmines and snipers in this province for weeks. They arrive angry, primed, and unsupervised by any officer willing to stop what happens next. What happens next is not a battle. It is hours of men shooting unarmed civilians at close range, in ditches, in doorways, in a drainage canal that will later need to be identified by body count because no other name fits. Estimates settle around 500 dead, mostly women, children, the elderly. Above all of this, flying reconnaissance is Hugh Thompson. Thompson grew up in Georgia. He joined the Navy, then the Army, then volunteered to fly scout helicopters. The lowest, slowest, most exposed job in the airspace. The first plane to draw enemy fire so the gunships behind it know where to strike. He is good at it. He has been shot down 4 times already. He is not a war critic. He is not a peace activist. He is, on the morning of March 16, doing exactly the job the Army trained him to do: fly low, watch the ground, report what he sees. What he sees, starting around 8 in the morning, does not match anything in his training. A wounded woman lying in a rice paddy. He marks her position and drops smoke so a ground medic can reach her. A ground officer walks over, nudges her with his boot to confirm she is still alive, and shoots her. Thompson watches this from 30 feet above. He does not yet know it is the smallest of what is coming. He keeps flying. He keeps seeing. A group of villagers, old men, women, children, a few infants held against their chests, walking away from the village along an irrigation ditch, escorted by American soldiers. Thompson circles back 20 minutes later. The villagers are in the ditch now, not walking, not standing. He understands what he is looking at before his brain finishes the sentence. His door gunner, Lawrence Colburn, and crew chief Glenn Andreotta are looking at the same thing. No one speaks for a moment that feels much longer than a moment. Thompson keys his radio again. He reports what he's seen to anyone who will listen. Flavors. Response he gets back is nothing. Static, or, worse, acknowledgement with no order to stop. He understands, sitting in the cockpit at 200 feet, that no one above him is going to end this, so he decides he will. He spots another group, perhaps 10 to 15 villagers, running from a bunker toward an approaching squad of American soldiers. He does the math in the time it takes to bank the helicopter. The soldiers are moving to intercept. The villagers have nowhere to run. Thompson lands his aircraft directly between them, not beside the confrontation, inside it. He climbs out, alone, unarmed except for his sidearm, and walks toward the American soldiers on the ground, men from his own army, his own country, close enough to see their faces. He tells them to hold their fire. The lieutenant in charge tells him this is not his concern. Thompson tells his door gunner and crew chief, if these men fire on the villagers, open up on them. Turn the machine gun on our own soldiers. He says this out loud, to Americans, about Americans. On the record, in front of witnesses. For a few seconds, nothing happens. Just men looking at each other across 20 feet of dirt, deciding what kind of day this is going to be. The soldiers do not fire. Thompson coaxes the villagers out of the bunker himself, speaking gently, waving his arms, trying to make his body, language do the work his Vietnamese cannot. He radios for 2 escort gunships to land and evacuate them. 9 to 11 villagers are lifted out. He does not know the exact number. No one ever fully will. On the way back to refuel, Andreotta spots movement in the ditch full of bodies. They land a 3rd time. Andreotta wades in through the dead to find it. A small boy, maybe 4 years old, unhurt but soaked in. The blood of everyone around him, clutched against a woman who is not. They pull him out. Thompson flies him to a hospital himself. He has now landed his aircraft 3 times. Inside an active massacre to stop parts of it, alone, without orders, without backup, without knowing if the men on the ground will simply shoot him too. He lands to refuel and reports what he saw to his commanding officers in person, furious, specific, using words like murder. The report travels up the chain. An order to cease fire is eventually given, hours after it should have been, after most of the killing is already finished. What follows is not an investigation into the massacre. It is a cover-up, and for over a year, it almost completely works. The official record calls this a military success. 28 enemy combatants killed, minimal American casualties. Medals are handed out for the operation. It takes a soldier who wasn't even at My Lai, Ron Ridenour, who heard fragments of what happened from friends, who served there and couldn't let it go, to start writing letters. He writes to the president, to the Secretary of Defense, to 30 members of Congress. Most don't respond. A few do. An investigation finally opens under General William Pierce, the Pierce Commission, and it is this, not the Army's own chain of command, that first documents the scale of what happened and how deliberately it was buried. The report names officers who falsified body counts, who classified murdered farmers as combat deaths. Almost none of them are ever charged. Wait. In 1970, Thompson testifies before the House Armed Services Committee about what he saw. Several members of Congress seem less interested in the massacre than in why an American officer aimed a weapon at American troops. One line of questioning, according to people in the room, edges toward whether Thompson himself should face charges, not Callie, not the men who pulled the triggers in the ditch, but the pilot who tried to stop them. Thompson answers the questions. He does not raise his voice. He does not perform outrage for the room. He simply keeps repeating what he saw in the same flat, exact language he used in his radio report that morning, until the hearing ends. No charges are filed against him, but no apology is offered either, and the distinction between the two apparently doesn't occur to anyone in the room that day. Only Lieutenant William Callie stands trial. In 1971, for the murder of 22 civilians, the trial becomes a lightning rod. Americans watching the news do not see Callie as a war criminal. They see a soldier being sacrificed to make the country feel better about a war it was already losing the will to fight. Public opinion polls at the time show a majority of Americans think Callie shouldn't be punished at all. He is convicted, then has his sentence commuted, then repeatedly reduced until he serves roughly 3 years, mostly under house arrest in his own apartment. Hugh Thompson is not thanked for what he did that day. He is treated by many of his fellow soldiers as the man who turned a gun on his own side. He receives death threats after this. Anonymous calls in the night, mutilated animals left on his porch. A message aimed at a man who couldn't be reached any other way. For years, almost no one outside a small circle of investigators and journalists knows his name, in connection with anything other than suspicion. He stays in the army, he flies more missions, he is shot down a 5th time and breaks his back, the injury that finally ends his combat flying. He carries what he saw at My Lai, the way people carry things that never fully set down, badly, unevenly, for the rest of his life. 30 years pass before the United States government gives Hugh Thompson, Lawrence Colburn, and the late Glenn Andreotta the Soldier's Medal for actions above and beyond the call of duty on March 16, 1968. By some accounts, the U.S. moves to award it only after learning that Vietnam's government intends to honor Thompson first, and the army does not want to be, in the words of one account, upstaged by the country it once fought. The citation reads, in part, that Thompson landed his helicopter in the line of fire between American troops and fleeing civilians. It does not mention that he ordered his own gunner to fire on Americans if they didn't stop. Some things stayed just outside what an official citation is willing to say out loud. In 1998, Thompson returns to My Lai for the first time since the massacre, to a memorial service marking 30 years. Any Nusis, Vietnamese woman who survived that day, approaches him. She tells him she forgives the soldiers who did this. Thompson is asked afterward if he can do the same. He says no. He says he doesn't think he ever will. This is not printed as failure. It is simply what he says, on the record, at 60 years old, decades, removed from the ditch and the bunker and the boy pulled out of the blood. He is not interested in being remembered as a man who found peace with what he witnessed. He tells a reporter later that Americans need to choose their leaders more carefully. Negotiators first, fighters second. A small, plain, unglamorous piece of advice from a man who has earned the right to give it and clearly wishes he never had to. Hugh Thompson dies in 2006 at 62 of cancer. Lawrence Colburn is with him at the end. Glenn Andreotta did not live to see any of the recognition, killed in Vietnam 3 weeks after the massacre, before anyone in power admitted what the 3 of them had actually done. There is a version of this story that ends with Thompson at peace, his conscience finally settled by a medal 3 decades late. That is not what happened. What happened is, a 24-year-old pilot looked down at a ditch, understood immediately what he was looking at, and made a decision in the time it takes. To bank a helicopter, land the aircraft, get out, and tell his own gunner to point A, machine gun at his own army if that's what stopping this required. He was called a traitor for it before he was ever called anything else. The medal came so late that one of the three men who earned it never lived to hold it, and the man who did survive to hold it stood in front of a reporter 30 years on and said plainly that he could not forgive, not because he'd failed to try, but because some things simply do not resolve just because enough time has passed. Maybe that refusal is its own kind of honesty, the kind the citation didn't have room for. What would it take for you to turn against your own side? In the moment, with no time to think it over, tell me what you'd have done, standing where he stood. And if you want the next one, we're not done opening these doors.